Our keynote speaker this evening is a news anchor and journalist, and she still has to make it on air tonight, so this is part of the reason why we're starting now and why we had to get going. Cheryl Wills is a veteran anchor with New York One, and when I say veteran, I mean it because she started in the very beginning in 1992. Cheryl hosts In Focus with Cheryl Wills, and if that's not enough airtime, she is also the nightly primetime anchor of New York One Live at 10. In 2018, Cheryl became the first African-American reporter in New York One's history to win an Emmy. What took so long? She is also the only New York One anchor to interview a sitting president. Cheryl is a motivational speaker with an exceptional personal story, and we cannot wait to hear it. I'd like to welcome Cheryl Wills, our keynote speaker of the evening. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies. To my colleague from News 12, you're doing a wonderful job. Can we give her a round of applause? Grace and style and beauty, perfect combination. Excellency, may I invite you to the stage, and Ms. Galit, please. I come with a gift. Please join me. I would never come to a party like this empty-handed. As I said, if you could join us, please, Minister. Oh, well, it's okay. Well, then I will give it to my girlfriend, Francine. Please come, Francine, on behalf of the minister. Tonight I will be on the air for Live at 10, and I want you to know this is the show that I am the original anchor for. How's that for woman power? The first anchor for Live at 10. Minister, thank you. Yes, but thank you. It's an honor to meet you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for having me. It's an honor. And Francine, where is my friend? There she is. Francine is such a dynamo behind the scenes. Thank you so much. Ladies, I am a New York City girl. Through and through. And I was raised in a 100% unempowered state. I was raised to be weak. I was raised to be dependent. And my heart was broken as far back as I can remember. My father was a New York City fireman, my mother his dutiful wife, and that's me in the yellow dress. My father was the first person to break my heart, I'm sorry to say. My father was a good man, but he lost his way. I had dreams of being a journalist when I was a very young girl. I had no idea how I would execute that because we were low income, living in public housing. And how would I jump into that television in the 1970s? I had no idea how I would make that happen. As I grew up in public school right here in New York City, they didn't see me. They saw an object. They saw a black object that very little was expected of. I remember once I told a teacher I had dreams of being a journalist, of writing a book. She essentially said to me, keep dreaming. No one expected anything of me. As I grew older and grew wiser, I suffered a tragedy. My father, who broke the family's heart time and time again, was killed in a motorcycle accident when I was 13. And he was 38 years old. He left my mom, he left the fire department, he lost his way, and those are firemen carrying his casket in for last rites. Imagine the little skinny 13-year-old girl bearing witness to such a tragedy. What would become of my dreams now that my father was gone? What would become of the female empowerment that we talk about today? But my father, well, he never knew anything about empowerment because he was born and raised in the South under what should have been called apartheid. We call it Jim Crow, but it was apartheid. He was forced to go and colored bathrooms and colored this and colored that. That confusion seeped into his children. I didn't know how I was going to make it. And as I grew older and put together the pieces of my family, it wasn't easy. But I made an incredible discovery. I discovered that we were the direct descendants of an enslaved man who fought in the American Civil War. My father had no idea. No one had any idea until 10 years ago when I started doing the research. I, the girl whose heart was crushed, was the first in my family to piece together this incredible story that history forgot and our family forgot. Sandy Wills was a soldier in President Lincoln's army. He ran away in 1863 after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And these, ladies and gentlemen, I've written several books about them, but these are the enlistment records for my grandfather and for the young men who joined him. They were all Willses, not of their own choosing. They were Willses because Edmund Wills bought them at auction. And during this terrible chapter in American history, when someone bought you, you dropped your last name and took on the surname of your owner. I was the woman that figured this out for my family. Generations carrying a name of a slave trader, and no one knew who. My grandfather's enlistment record is profound. In 1863, he walked up to an officer and put his right hand up and swore to defend the flag of the United States, a flag that despised him. A flag that said, it's okay with us if you're a slave, we'll never protect you. Still, he loved America. But I'm not here today to go into my grandfather's story as I usually do before the many hundreds of thousands of students that I've lectured before. Today, I'm here to talk about his wife. For good reason. Sandy Wills served from 1863 to 1865, but when his duty was over, he met a beautiful woman named Emma. She too is someone who history forgot, and I have resurrected her story with tremendous pride. Emma was a former slave herself in the same town in Tennessee. She was about 17 years old when she met my grandfather, returning a war hero. They married and had 9 children. And they lived in a house like this, which is still standing. Emma was a proud woman. She made sure that the world knew that this was the first legal marriage in the family. This is their marriage certificate. Why is this a big deal? Because prior to this, marriages among enslaved people were a mockery. It wasn't recognized by the United States. A woman could fall in love with a man, but if they were enslaved, their owner could come and sell her to Mississippi and sell her husband to Alabama. But in 1869, Emma made history as the first real bride recognized in the state of Tennessee. Well, when she started to have children, as I said, she had 9, she recognized that her first firstborn son, William. Ambassador, greetings. Thank you for being here. She realized that her first son, William, was extraordinary because William was the first child who was truly free, who was born free. And my grandmother had a dilemma. She didn't know when she was born because few records were kept when enslaved people were born. They were considered like cattle or horses. Who would record an animal's birth? You wouldn't record a slave's birth either. So she didn't know when she came into the world. She was forced into a world of illiteracy, a way of dehumanizing her and keeping her weak. So she never knew how to read. She never knew how to write. She didn't know her birth date. This country had solidified her invisibility. But when her son was born, she, the beautiful free woman in 1870, said to her former owner, "You, in this book, please write down when my son was born." His name was Joel Moore, and he did as she commanded. And he wrote in her book, William Wills, born February 3rd, 1870. There's a reason I'm telling you this. Emma had her second son, Alex. She went right back to Joel Moore. You know when a woman is determined, there's no stopping her. She went back for more, and she said, write my next son, born September 20th, 1871. He did as Emma commanded. He didn't do it once. He didn't do it twice. He did it for all 9 of her children. He inscribed it in a book that she could not read for herself. Stop and think about that. But Emma knew her family history was important, and she knew that the recording of her family history mattered. Why am I telling you this? Because in 1889, when she was pregnant with her 9th child, Sandy died. And my great-great-great-grandmother was left a widow in the middle of nowhere in Haywood County, Tennessee, with 9 dependent children, and her husband, a proud Civil War soldier, was dead. What was she to do? Like most widows, she depended on the goodness of her local church. But Emma had a plan, again. She paid attention to what was happening to other women whose Civil War husbands had died, and she realized they were getting a pension. And she said, well, my husband also served. I'm due a pension too. She went back to the same Joel Moore and said, I need you to help me fill out this application. How did I learn all of this? From digging into the National Archives. And I uncovered an incredible story that to this day has empowered me. She went to Joel Moore and said, please, fill out this application for me. He did as she commanded. It was sent to Washington. Washington wrote back, your application is denied. No surprise. She was what they called a colored woman. She was illiterate. She was a former slave. In the eyes of the United States, she was invisible. It meant nothing to them to reject a mother with 9 children. Well, what do you think she did? Did she cry? No. Did she Get angry? No. I'm so proud to tell you, during this Women's History Month, my grandma Emma got even and hired a lawyer. And I present to you Exhibit A, found in her file. My grandmother was relentless. Through Joel Moore, that same former owner that she grew up with, who somehow had a soft spot for her tenacity. He helped her obtain a lawyer, and she gave oral depositions. You're looking at one of hundreds of documents I found in the file. And you could see where she says, I am a woman. I am a wife. My husband served this country. And the government was not impressed in those days that she was an empowered woman. They said, really? Give us proof of your husband's birth then. This was something she could not do. Because, as I said, there was no proof of Sandy Wills's birth. And they roundly rejected her. Well, my grandmother said, appeal! She appealed through her lawyer. Washington sent back another letter. You have failed to provide proof of your husband's birth. We will consider your appeal if you provide proof of your birth, Emma Wills. She couldn't do that either. And when she explained, I was born a slave, they didn't keep a record of when I was born, the government was not at all moved. They rejected her a second time. She told her lawyer to appeal. You thought strong women started with all of you, didn't you? It goes a long way back. My grandmother Emma, born a slave in 1851, circa 1851, told her lawyer to go back again. And when I saw the correspondence, I saw how the government was fed up. You could almost tell they said, Emma Wills again? And they sent more correspondence and said, Mrs. Wills, you failed to provide proof of your husband's birth. You have failed to provide proof of your birth. You could be anyone claiming to be the widow of Sandy Wills. This is our final request of you, and then we're not entertaining any more of your appeals. Give us proof that those 9 children were born to you and Sandy Wills. And she grabbed the little book that Joe Moore had taken his time and wrote William Wills, born February 3rd, 1870, Alex Wills, born September 20th, 1871, all the way down to little James. And they submitted that to the government. And I'm so proud to tell you, Minister, she won. And they granted my grandmother her pension for the rest of her life. I like to tell students that story, and I like to explain to them that when my grandmother won, the lawyer clearly said, we need you to sign off on this. And the illiterate former slave did what all of her fellow former slaves did. They wrote her name for her, Emma Wills. And in between her first and last name, they put her mark. And I could just see she awkwardly held the pen, a pen she was never permitted to learn to use. And she gently put her X. There it is. Ladies, let me tell you what that X means to me today. It means that I and you should be excellent in everything we do. I have decided to take back that X the only way I know how. To be extraordinary, to be exceptional, not just for Emma. We all have Emmas in our lives. We all have women who took very little and made so much with so little. We all have Emmas who went to the voting booth and were told, you can't vote because you're a woman. We all have an Emma in our lives. And ladies, we don't do enough, in my view, to honor them. In Central Park, there are dozens and dozens of statues. Not one is a woman. We, as women, have to uphold our grandmothers. We, as women, have to tell their stories. We, as women, have to make sure our daughters know the full story. Why? Because they wouldn't be who they were if it wasn't for the Emmas that did so much with so little. Our mothers and grandmothers who escaped the Holocaust. Our mothers and grandmothers who escaped slavery, Harriet Tubman. Our mothers and grandmothers who withstood abuse where no one would come and defend them. They are strong women. We did not get here alone. Our beloved minister, the trailblazer, didn't get here by herself. All of you accomplished, beautiful women. There are grandmothers in heaven saying, do you remember me? Do you remember when I was cleaning and scrubbing toilets so you could go to that university? We owe it to the mothers of our lives to salute them, to exalt them, so our daughters to come will know that a tremendous price was paid. I take Emma with me everywhere I go as I close. I sign books for children, and I put a little X for Emma. Because I don't want anyone to think that me signing my name is something that came just because I was special. Someone signed an X before I could sign off. And so with that, ladies, I salute you. And I salute the women angels who have filled this space with us. I salute you and I encourage you to be Emma, to go places where no one's ever gone, to challenge people who shut the door in your face. When they reject you, you owe it to your grandmothers to stand and let them laugh at you, let them put you down, but you stand your ground. This is what it means to salute the Emmas in your life. There is no weakness in us. There is no weakness in me. You haven't heard the last from me because now I am writing a book all about Emma. And I will be back to tell you a story that will knock your socks off. How's that for a news tease? Ladies, thank you so much for your time and attention. Keep fighting the power.
Thank you so much, Cheryl Wills. I think we need to give another round of applause to that. And Cheryl, I do take my grandmother with me. I wore her earrings today just especially. It's true, we're not here by coincidence. Thank you so much. Great to see you. And Minister Gamliel also has to go, so thanks once again for joining us. And Ambassador Danny Dayan, thank you so much for being here. What a surprise. It's the only man we'd let in today. Is that right? We accept. Play by the women's rules, we accept. That's a tough act to follow. I was just Black History Month last month, and it's followed by International Women's Day and Women's Month, and I really see it correlate, and it makes so much sense to me. So, wow, if you can, do yourself a favor. If you haven't seen some of the amazing films that have been out this year, Black Klansman, Green Book, about the civil rights movement, you really, really should.